changed. How wonderful. Oh, you've been to Asgard.
Where are your pants?
Oh, he says it helps him think.
What can I say about Thor: The Dark World? No, seriously, what is there possibly to say about this movie? If Alan Taylor's goal was to make the most forgettable movie imaginable, he nailed it. The only things I truly recall are the mid-credits scene that introduces the idea of Infinity Stones to the MCU, and Thor hanging up Mjolnir on a coat hanger. Those are the highlights. Everything else is completely forgettable.
That the whole world is going crazy. All the stuff we saw.
Sem problema.
Taci mais.
Ai, não me deixo com fome. Quê? Não vão quando eu fome. No, wait. Oh, that's not right.
This is probably the movie my opinion on has varied the most throughout the years. When it first came out, I thought it was inferior to the already lacking Hulk from 2003. Then it grew on me a bit. Now, I just don't care about it. This is easily the most skippable MCU movie. Not only does it do the least pushing the MCU forward, it also does the least pushing itself forward. This is essentially a big budget episode of the Bill Bixby Lou Ferrigno series, and most importantly, it's just a standard episode. Nothing special besides a big fight at the end, which looked solid at the time but has aged worse than anything else in the entire MCU. In many ways, The Incredible Hulk is just as forgettable as Thor: The Dark World, except it has a much better villain, which is an extremely low bar.
Any last words? Hulk! Smash!
You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor. I have successfully privatized world peace.
Iron Man 2 has some great ideas behind it. In fact, there's ideas for about 3 fantastic Iron Man movies here. Iron Man dealing with the arc reactor killing him, Ivan Vanko wanting revenge for Howard Stark stealing his father's invention, Justin Hammer attempting to use the government to make his own Iron Man, and they never give any one of these storylines the attention it deserves. Too much going on and not enough focus. To give you an idea of how little thought went into this, Tony Stark finds that Howard Stark hid an element he discovered in the landscape of a Stark Expo, and this element is impossible to synthesize. So Tony synthesizes it, and it just so happens to be the exact thing he needs to put in his arc reactor to not die. The raw level of contrivances needed for this to work are astronomical. Iron Man 2 is downright frustrating to watch because it is completely overloaded with wasted potential.
Don't stay down here. This is the worst place to be.
Okay, you got a spot. Where's mine?
It's the kill box, Tony, okay? This is where you go to die.
At least make it a challenge for me.
This is the first movie I would actually give a recommendation to watch. Still, poor Chris Hemsworth. His early Thor entries are so lackluster. The fact that this is his best solo movie for such a long time is insane. It's a serviceable enough movie that perhaps does Dutch angles a bit too frequently, though it's hardly Battlefield Earth. I do enjoy the more Shakespearean style of this movie that was clearly Kenneth Branagh's influence. Unfortunately, that is also part of its issue. It is far too serious for an inherently silly premise. Sure, there is humor here, but not nearly enough, and when it does happen, it feels out of place in this overly serious movie. Still, I won't call this a bad movie. It's just good enough.
You're no match for the mighty.
Name a detail so bizarre a scroll could never fabricate it.
Toast is cut diagonally, I can't eat it. You didn't need that, did you?
No.
This might be the most disappointing movie on this list. Marvel had done such a great job with Black Panther, and I assumed they would continue that tradition here. I enjoyed this movie enough, and Samuel L. Jackson, Ben Mendelsohn, and the cat really stole the show here. Captain Marvel proved to be one of the less interesting parts of her origin movie. At least she was better than her villain, who might somehow be the worst MCU villain ever. What are the motivations of the Supreme Intelligence, and how do they set them up in this movie?
Work.
Captain Marvel, it's not bad, but should have been so much better.
Hey, you try and entertain a 10-year-old when you can't leave the house. You know the lengths that I've gone to? Close-up magic. I learned that.
Ant-Man and the Wasp is nothing special except for the fantastic de-aging. It was started with 2015's Ant-Man, and surprisingly, these movies do it better than any other franchise, even in comparison to others in the MCU. Paul Rudd clearly has fun with this role, as does Michael Douglas. The villain of Ghost had some potential, but when they just have Janet Deus Ex Machina her problem away, it really hurts her entire motivation and turns her from someone desperate to more just a jerk. This is not a strong entry, especially to follow Infinity War with, however, it's entertaining enough.
Misdirection. One of the first things they teach you at Online Close-Up Magic University.
You're up there wearing that goofy thing, lighting up cars, calling yourself the Shocker. I'm the Shocker. I shock people. What is this, pro wrestling?
I'm probably gonna get the most grief for how low I place this movie. First off, Michael Keaton's Vulture is easily one of the best MCU villains. The movie has a John Hughes feel and a distinctive atmosphere that is shared by no other superhero movie. Tom Holland is probably the best actor at being both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield was almost as good at Spider-Man, while Maguire was an outstanding Peter Parker. Holland is really good at both. Sadly, this movie has minimal impact. It's just too light for its own good. The stakes are so low that my concern is nowhere near what it should be. It's Spider-Man fighting some thieves who are getting in over their head. Lots of people call this the best Spider-Man movie, when for me, it's just the fourth best behind the first two Raimi movies and Into the Spider-Verse. That's good company to be in, but it is the worst of those four.
I was wrong about you. I think with a little more mentoring, I think you're a real asset to the team.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't, but there is grace in their failings. I think you missed that.
This is the first of three movies I feel are very underrated in the MCU. Age of Ultron feels a bit much like a clone of the first Avengers, but where the story can be a bit lacking, the visuals here are a huge upgrade from its predecessor. This is the best looking movie Joss Whedon has ever done. In fact, looking at just the raw visuals, it's rather shocking that this is the same guy who directed the original mere 3 years later. The Avengers fighting an army of goons has become cliche by now, but Whedon shoots it so much better here than the Russo brothers do in any of their movies. Ultron is also severely underrated as a villain. I blame the advertising that promised a much darker villain than what we got. As it is, Ultron is just Tony's ego run amok, and he works as a menacing foe that also has issues.
I'm sorry.
Ant-Man is only slightly better than Age of Ultron. This is simply because it's a much more focused story. This is a heist movie, which proves to be incredibly fun. The story is largely done by Edgar Wright, but it's unknown how much, and we will likely never know. This was originally to be a Phase 1 movie, but kept being pushed back until Wright was replaced by Peyton Reed. Reed also directed Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I think it's clear much of the quality of the original film came from Edgar Wright and his crew. Still, despite a director's shift late in the game, Ant-Man works. Hardly groundbreaking in any way, but fun nonetheless.
Ants! Ants! Ant-Man!
This isn't the end. There are other things that can give your life meaning.
Like what? Like you?
And this is the part where you apologize.
This is the part where you leave.
I was disappointed in this movie when it first came out. They never have Stephen Strange take that dark dive towards change. They almost do, but then they don't. He's not as much an asshole as he should be at the beginning. Yes, he was much worse in the comic book.
Insurance?
Well, their deductible's fairly substantial, but...
Income?
Modest. Okay, low.
Would a medical journal be interested in Miss Latanzi?
No, but...
Then neither am I.
And his change doesn't feel as drastic. Instead, they went for a more Iron Man-esque approach to his origin, which is funny, because in 2008's Iron Man, they used Doctor Strange's origin to help them make Tony's origin. So Tony's more intense change was inspired by comic book Doctor Strange, and that change inspired Doctor Strange to have a more mellowed down origin. Still, there is a lot to like here. These have to be the most visually interesting fights in the entire MCU. Benedict Cumberbatch was pretty much made for this role. Overall, this is just a very good movie that should have been one of the MCU's best.
You cannot do this forever.
Actually, I can. This is how things are now. You and me, trapped in this moment, endlessly.
If your president calls me in the next half minute, Tom lives. Go.
I strongly advise against that.
This is the right thing to do.
This is the second entry in the underrated MCU camp. This one I get to a degree. There are lots of ways to reinvent the Mandarin. You really have to. But this isn't the Mandarin. This is some guy with fire powers pretending to be the Mandarin. Literally, if you think of the villain like that, instead of thinking of him as the Mandarin, you can have a lot of fun with this movie. This is the first MCU movie with a clear director's voice. Iron Man 3 has a style very much of a Shane Black movie, a quirkiness that only he does, and it works so well for Iron Man. It's also great how this movie shows Tony's resourcefulness, how even without the suit, he is a force to be reckoned with. Iron Man 3 isn't as good as the original, but it's a damn sight better than Iron Man 2.
The Travis tree. I know I'm shorter in person, a bit smaller, everyone says that, but hey, if you're here to arrest me, there's some people I'd like to roll on.
Here's how it works, Meryl Streep.
I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from.
Well, there are already so many big men fighting this war. Maybe what we need now is a little guy.
This is the third and last of the MCU movies that are underrated. The Captain America trilogy is the best sub-franchise in the MCU. All three movies are some of the best Marvel has to offer. Even though this is the worst of the trilogy, it still does a fantastic job establishing exactly what type of person Steve Rogers is. Captain America is probably the toughest character to get right. Give it to the wrong hands, he comes off as a boring Boy Scout, or even worse, a right-wing government stooge. But given to people who understand the character, he becomes engaging and interesting. Yes, maybe a bit of a Boy Scout, but a fully committed, honest one. Chris Evans really nails this role. It's tough to imagine anyone else doing a better job.
What made to you so special?
Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn.
Like my own damn parents who sold me, your own little baby, into slavery. I know who you are, boy, because you're me.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, when it's at its best, is perhaps the best of the entire MCU. The issue is all those great moments are largely towards the end. The second act is filled with some of the worst antagonists of the whole universe. We have the Sovereign and Taserface as villains, and neither feels like any sort of threat to our heroes.
Tell him the name of the man what sealed his fate. Taserface.
Now that I've bashed the side villains, the main villain, Ego, is one of the MCU's best. It just takes way too long to get to that point. However, his villain reveal is amazing, and once that happens, the movie goes from a bit boring to exciting. Honestly, this is a great movie, the first act of Act 2 holding it back.
It broke my heart to put that tumor in her head.
What?
Yeah, just like that.
Even if there's a small chance that we can undo this, I mean, we owe it to everyone who's not in this room to try.
This movie has no right being as good as it is. We've been building to this for 21 movies. These pieces should not come together this smoothly. That being said, they don't slide together perfectly. In my review, I said I found the time travel inconsistent. I've seen this movie again, and while the core of my issues still exist, where the movie fails to follow its own rules are almost with every time travel point I don't bring up. So literally, everything I complain about follows the logic of the movie. Most everything else falls apart. That being said, it would be impossible for this movie not to be a bit bumpy. So much history, so many threads have to be resolved with this one entry, and it largely works.
18 months in a gamma lab. I put the brains and the brawn together. And now look at me. Best of both worlds.
The only thing you really fight for is yourself. You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play. To lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you?
I think I would just cut the wire.
Always a way out.
This was it, the high point of the MCU, not from a story or filmmaking standpoint, but from an accomplishment standpoint. They had successfully given 4 Avengers solo movies and brought those same characters by almost all the same actors in one movie, and yet somehow this clash of personalities worked. Not only that, it worked fantastic. The Avengers is a movie that literally lived up to the hype. That's something most movies fail at, but somehow the MCU usually pulls off. It would be wrong of me not to mention Joss Whedon, who showed an amazing ability to bring this near impossible movie together. Even even more impressive when you realize that this was only his second feature film. The Avengers is a milestone not just for the MCU, but for films in general. That goal that all studios want to hit, but so far none have been able to come close to.
Hey, Tony.
I'm sorry, this is the fun V. The humdrum V's back there.
Nice job.
See you back, bitch.
It all started here. For years, this was my favorite Marvel movie. There was almost no script, and this movie was largely improvised. You can't tell until the third act, when Obadiah Stane jumps into a big robot and starts killing people. Do you wonder what his plan was here? Stay in the robot forever and fight off any cops that come by? That's besides the point, because until then, we could get amazing performances by Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeff Bridges, and Clark Gregg, all in top form. Terrence Howard works as Rhodey, although Don Cheadle is way better. The real breakout was Robert Downey Jr. This is the role that revitalized his film career, and he's been consistently good in it throughout the entire MCU.
I cannot help you if you're going to start all of this again.
There is nothing except this. There's no art opening. There is no benefit. There is nothing to sign. There is the next mission. And nothing else.
FDR signed the Lend-Lease bill with ease in 1941. Provided support to the Allies when they needed it most. Some would say it brought our country closer to war.
See, if not for these, you wouldn't be here. I'm trying to, what do you call it? That's an olive branch.
This movie was made largely as a reaction to Batman v Superman. It was something the Russo brothers wanted to do, and once Batman v Superman was announced, they got the green light. What is shocking is how similar these two movies are. Yet in every way, Civil War was a superior movie. Batman v Superman is about two heroes fighting because they refuse to talk to each other. Civil War is about two heroes fighting despite constantly trying to talk it out. They hit a brick wall in their beliefs. They don't want to fight, but they cannot go to the other person's side. Their morals will not allow it. Neither side is completely right, both have faults, which makes their conflict all the more compelling. Captain America Civil War is Batman v Superman done right.
Criminals, Downey. I think that's the word you're looking for. Right? It didn't used to mean me. Or Sam or Wanda. And here we are.
I used to spin it really fast, and it would pull me off the...
Oh my God, Emma pulled you off?
The ground. It would pull me off the ground up into the air, and I would fly.
This is the most fun I have with any of these movies. It took 3 movies and Taika Waititi to figure out how to make a great Thor movie. This one actually sees all the potential of Thor, and sees all the crazy stuff as an asset instead of a hindrance. Why try to force Thor's world to make scientific sense when you can just use it as a launching point to really explore how crazy this universe can be? This movie has a solid amount of extra baggage. It has to resolve Loki taking Odin's place as ruler of Asgard, and it feels like they're just going through it as fast as possible to get to the story they want to tell. Yet it's still so much fun. Does Doctor Strange need to be in this movie? No, but his scene is so much fun that I would never take it out. Thor Ragnarok knows what it is and doesn't apologize for it. It's crazy, it's wacky, and it's a blast.
Wow, I didn't hear any thunder, but out of your fingers, was that like sparkles?
Didn't I keep it under wraps that the king of a third world country runs around in a bulletproof catsuit? I'd say we were even. You really need to leave now.
Claude is leaving out that door with me. You've been warned.
Perhaps the most woke of the entire MCU, Ryan Coogler's Black Panther showed a willingness to tackle social issues like no other Marvel or even comic book movie before it. Of course, it may be impossible to avoid such a thing when your name was used by a group that pushed for African American civil rights. Black Panther also has one of the best villains of the MCU and one of the best heroes' journeys. The sets and costume design for Wakanda were amazing. It just would have been nice if the CGI wasn't so cut rate. Still, when Black Panther is at its strengths, nothing competes.
I chose my people. I chose Wakanda. Our future depended
You are wrong!
His people are completely literal. Metaphors are gonna go over his head.
Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it.
This is literally the most fun you can have at a Marvel movie, save maybe Ragnarok. James Gunn's story of 5 criminals who band together to save a planet from the evil Ronin is filled with comedy and emotion that balance perfectly. Sure, Ronin could and probably should have been more fleshed out, but like many Marvel movies, this is all about the heroes, a collection of broken people who find themselves becoming better people when they are together. Add to it a super fun soundtrack, and you get Guardians of the Galaxy.
Subtle, take it back.
What are you doing?
I'm distracting you, you big turd blossom.
Look. Pretty, isn't it? Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
The movie that should be a complete clusterfuck is actually one of the most cohesive and outright enjoyable. The cast of Infinity War makes the cast of Endgame seem small in comparison. This is a movie that had the most raw characters to juggle, yet it does this by essentially making Thanos the protagonist of the film. The entire movie is about his quest, his motives and goals. The heroes work far more like antagonists in that they are only actively trying to stop Thanos. By doing this, it gives Infinity War far more cohesion than it should have. It makes it one of the best MCU movies.
Where is he?
Did we just lose?
A lot of things you don't know about me.
I know, Nick. That's the problem.
The Russo brothers Marvel films have been huge crossover events that balance huge casts while not feeling overloaded. The big exception to this is the best Marvel movie, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. The story of Captain America realizing the world is not the same as it used to be, and that the good guys may not be all he thought they could be. It's a man out of time, able to recognize the problems of our time. The fish out of water story where the fish sees things clearer than anyone else.
The price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay. And if I'm the only one, then so be it. But I'm willing to bet I'm not.
Did you write that down first? Or was it off the top of your head?
I'll give you a local.
No, thank you.
Do you enjoy pain?
Pain don't hurt.
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.